Hey, everybody. Um, Welcome to the every other Sunday Rooftops of America live stream. I suppose we can call this the Christmas edition, um, since we're basically 1 week out from the holiday itself, at least Christmas Eve. So close enough. Tonight, I am enjoying. I think I had said that I was down to my last beer from New Hampshire, but this is my last cider from New Hampshire. It's the Hermit Woods Wineries Hermit Heirloom Crab Apple Hard Cider, and it is pretty tasty. It reminds me, it's tart and with a hint of sweetness at the end. But man, we used to have this big. It reminds me of this crabapple tree we had in our backyard on the farm growing up, and then pulling fruit down from it and biting into it. It was so tart. Um, and you'd always dare people like, how many could you bite into? Um, but that's what this reminds me of. So a little nostalgia for the day. Um, Dressed for the occasion in my Christmassy flannel. so let's see. Eric, good evening. Hope you're doing well. Pretzel 2 is not going to make it. He's at a concert. Bill, nice to have you here. Archie, thanks for being here. It's been a while. It has been a while. Thank you for the well wishes. I appreciate it. Traveling Ron, man. Good evening to you as well. And Jess, hey, how are you doing? Hey, for everybody that isn't, I'm going to put a plug in for Ron Man's channel. He's been putting out some pretty good stuff. Um, give it a look if you get a chance. I enjoy it, and I think you may enjoy it too. So, um, yeah, so Christmas is almost upon us. A couple things have happened since the last time I spoke to you. Um, Went down to Fort Moore, Georgia, formerly known as Fort Benning, to go to my nephew's infantry school graduation, and that was pretty fun. Um, the last time I'd actually been on that post was when my brother actually graduated Ranger School. God, years ago, 10 years ago? Can't be right. I guess it is. Longer than that. No. Well, it has been a while. Um, so we, my brother Cody, myself, my dad, um, my sister Hunter's mom, Summer, her husband Jake, um, or Hunter's dad, Mike, and his wife Margot, and my sister Tawny were all down there, and it was awesome. Um, I know this is a high point thing, but we didn't do any high points. But I will say this: if you ever get a chance to get in that neck of the woods, if you're in Columbus, Georgia, for some reason, the National Infantry Museum there on Fort Moore is definitely worth checking out. It's really cool. So, um, but I feel at the same time, after a couple days down there, my HUA uh, quotient has been topped off. I'm pretty good to go now for a couple years. So, but it was really cool to see my nephew have that experience, and another soldier in the ranks, another soldier in our family. So, but yeah, I was, one of the last times I'd actually been on Fort Moore. I think there was another time too, because I remember distinctly that my brother um, came up to Nashville to visit, and he was on more for some reason, Benning at the time. And I remember driving him back, and we stopped at Chia Mountain. For That was my first time at that actual high point. Cody and I had stopped there, um, and it was a beautiful day. Uh, And yeah, um, the next time, of course, I was there, it was not the weather conditions were not nearly as good, but no, it was a really cool area. So, oh, I see Stephen. Happy or holiday cheers from Mount Hood, and to you as well from this lowland here in wet Philadelphia right now. So, um, yeah. So that was my big adventure over the last 2 weeks. Was running down to Georgia. I will say we had beautiful weather flying down. And one of my favorite things to do on that leg, that direct Philly to Atlanta leg, is look out the window. If you're sitting on the right side of the plane and you look out, you get this great view of the Appalachians, the Alleghenies, the Blue Ridge. And one of the things that was always really cool and that I've always liked is if you look at some of those old maps, you see those distinct rows, like how they mapped them out. And then when you're up at 30,000, 35,000 feet, and you look out and you see those distinct ridge lines running um, across the horizon. And I love that. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. They might not look like much when you're in the heart of it, but man, from some elevation, you can understand how the Appalachians were such an imposing feature to get past. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they were effectively a wall for when Europeans first arrived on these shores and proceeded to then colonize. And but getting into Ohio or getting into um, Tennessee, Kentucky, you could see how everything was directed to those little points where there was gaps where they could actually get through. Um, you really get an interesting perspective. So perhaps the next time you're up and about, that's something to always consider is how the geography, the physical geography of a place shapes how it was settled or how people live. I think that's one of the most fascinating things that since I started the Rooftops of America series, digging into that little bit has always been really cool. Um, Trying to figure how the land itself has shaped how people interact with it and, um, you know, live with it even today. So that's a slight sidebar. Uh, Other things have been going on. I'm happy to say I'm still cranking out on series Investa. In some ways, I'm sort of glad I saved these two for last. It's a part of the solar system I really hadn't given any attention to. And so I'm learning a ton more than I ever thought I would. And I think it's shaping up to be a relatively interesting way to finish out the main series. I've also, I think I'm going to have to recant. I think there might be some more observations than I originally expected to have, little 15-minute bursts that I think I'm going to keep going because I keep finding more interesting things. So, um, Pluto episodes are good. Thanks, Archie. I appreciate that. In your research, did you find any information on other Kuiper dwarfs such as Eris? Yeah, I mean, there's the usual stuff with like Gong Gong, Quar, and Sedna, things like that. But the big thing to take away from it all is when you look at Kuiper Belt objects we visited, there's only been four. One of them's Triton, but Voyager 2 visited, then Pluto and Charon. And then they called it Ultima Tool, but it wasn't. It's been renamed something else, Akaroth or Arkoth or something like that. But it, other than that, the information about Eris is basically you're almost looking at the same thing for these bodies that are further out, these trans-Neptunian objects that are further out, you're in the same predicament that, say, Clyde Tombaugh, the guy who discovered Pluto, um, was in the 1930s. You could pretty much write everything about Eris on one sheet of paper because it's just too far out. And that's even more so with, say, the smaller ones. So places like Makemake or Hoamea, we can make get a very general idea of it. We can speculate what it's made out of, but we can even figure out if they've got moons. But beyond that, we're sort of limited. And maybe James Webb will bring more insight to that area. I hope so. Fingers crossed. That's one of the things we really are hoping. Not we, but all of us. Sounds like, but that's one of the things I think would be really cool to see what Webb, when it's turned onto the bodies in our own solar system, particularly those objects further out, the Uranuses, the Neptunes, what more we can learn. But, you know, as stated before, if we're going to learn more, we got to go there. And getting to a place like Eris it will be a challenge because of how it sits. It's incredible that we can even know anything about these systems. It is. Science is amazing. Telescopic astronomy is astounding. I mean, I think it's one of these things where it reminds me of the same sort of thing we talk about when you think about flight. Like, I remember thinking in 2003 that I could get anywhere. You could get almost 90% of the places in the world in 2 days. That's being really, there's probably the percentage is probably lower, but think about that for a moment. Like, how, as human beings, how far we can get around our own planet, because of flight. We and it only took Gagarin goes into space in 61. Wright brothers are flying a heavier than air aircraft in 1903. In fact, a couple months before that, there's that great, I can't remember the name of the author, but I think it's an article in the New York Times saying that, mankind will never be able to fly a heavier than aircraft thing in 1,000 years or whatever. Yeah, a couple months later at Kitty Hawk, they're flying an airplane. And of course, it doesn't go far, a couple hundred. Can't remember what the first flight is. It's short. But it doesn't take long before, 66 years later, we got Neil Armstrong stepping out of the Eagle on the surface of the moon. It's absolutely incredible. And I think with telescopic astronomy, you get a sort of the same thing. Though the time span from when, say, Kepler and Galileo are making their observations, Newton, all those guys, you have a couple hundred years, but the improvement from, say, when Tombaugh looks at Pluto, that telescope he's using would be very recognizable to a guy like Herschel. Whereas the Hubble Space Telescope, that's this huge leap forward. We're now putting a telescope in orbit. And not only are we now putting them in orbit, we're putting them at Lagrange points. It's absolutely amazing. So anyway, sorry, that was a real big sidebar. We're about to be joined by Christmas Cat. Call her that. So, Voyager 1 started sending nonsense a couple of days ago, which is absolutely incredible considering how long that thing has been going. So, uh, excuse me while this stole decides to get on my shoulder. But I definitely think the Voyager series, or the Voyager program, is one we definitely got our taxpayer dollars, our money's worth out of. I mean, consider how long that technology's been going, 50 years strong. That's incredible. Ramen, do you have any plans for the total eclipse in April? Actually, I haven't thought that far ahead. We saw the one in 2017 because we were living in Nashville at the time, so that was super convenient. We've talked a little bit. Magnus's spring break is the last week of March, so um, it doesn't quite line up in any way, shape, or form. But I don't know. To be determined. Um, if I can find a good place to bump around to, I might do that, or find a place to go see the eclipse. I know a lot of folks had opportunities to see um, it on high points. I think there was a couple of folks that saw it on top of Bora and said it was absolutely stunning. So um, I haven't looked at the track. I'm sure it's already out there. I'm sure there's some ambitious high pointer who's already mapped out the route and where which high points fall in the path. So um, where I'm at in Philadelphia, and I think this one, the one from 2017, tracked northwest to southeast, and I think this one tracks southwest to northeast. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It definitely, if you get a chance, and if you didn't see the one in 2017, go see this one. It's really cool. It was actually my first solar eclipse that I'd ever seen. I'd seen plenty of lunar eclipses, but never a solar one. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed it. So, but as we in March, I think we'll probably be talking more about that as things get closer. David, good evening to you as well. Thanks for being here. So the closest area will be Buffalo, New York. Well, that's not a terrible drive for me. So I might have to look into that. So, all right, I'm going to put you down for a moment. Okay, settle down as best you can. Settle down. What do y'all have going on for Christmas plans? For me, I shall be in Nashville, visiting family and friends. No high pointing this time around. Last time, my friend Colin and I went down and refilmed Mississippi, Whittle Mountain, which had been a long time goal, and I think that came out really well. But this time, I think I'm focused on getting the solar system wrapped up, the main episodes wrapped up. You're just being a menace. Let's put you right there. So, but yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to like having a week sort of undisturbed, a little bit undisturbed, where I can really pick up some of the production pace, get some of the other content. We filmed a lot this year. Oh, I'll be here in PA at my brother's. You have to remind me, Ron, man, where in PA you are. David, I'm visiting family for this Christmas. Awesome. So, winter solstice at the Salmon Huckleberry Wilderness. Nice. That's nice. Eric, of course, on top of Mount Cusco. I will say this, actually. Every time I see that, I think of something. I think of Thaddeus, the namesake of that mountain. He's a fascinating guy, and I'm hoping as I start the Signers series that I can also explore some of these other folks, get some time. So that's right, Lehigh Valley. You're right up north from me. So Jess took the next 2 weeks off, heading to the mountains for snow tubing and hot springs. You lucky devil. So I hope you have a wonderful time up there, Jess. Speaking of which, at some point I owe you a call to talk about dunes. And wow, you are just being crazy tonight. Just relax, relax. There you go. So yeah, and then so that's my we're gonna do for Christmas Day itself. We're doing something a little bit different. We're doing Lord of the Rings. We're doing all the extended editions, starting early, Christmas Day morning, and doing all three extended versions, and then doing the Hobbit menu throughout the day. So that's 7 meals. I've got a menu for this that I've written up. So that is starting bright and early, 7 in the morning on Christmas, putting in the fellowship, having breakfast, then having second breakfast, then 11s, then lunch, then afternoon tea, then dinner, then supper. So I figured it's going to be a lot of fun. And I will walk away very full. David, I like that cat too, but she's being a little bit of a menace right now. So she really wants attention, which usually happens because I've been gone a few days, and as soon as I get back, she's like, "My cat dad's here," and I need all your attention, not the random people you're talking to on the internet. So she can't help it. I love her to pieces. She is one of my favorites. So she is a Siamese tabby mix. So she's very affectionate, like a lot of good tabby cats, and she's got the loudest meow in the world. Compliments of being uh, a Siamese girl. So, uh, all right, looking forward to it. April, May is a great time because Matano Creek will be running and not too scorching hot. That's the hope. So I will keep you posted because that has been something I've wanted to do um, ever since we talked about it, like in 2017, which is like 6 years ago now, which is crazy when you think about it. Maybe it was 2018. Still, it's been a while. So, and then the other big things we got going on coming up is I got to go to Texas, but not the fun part of Texas. Not saying that San Antonio is not fun, but there's no elevation around there. But I do have to go there at the tail end of February. So I might also get a chance to go to St. Louis in March. And if I do, then I want to get over to the Archway and pick up the National Park High Point there. So you were just being crazy. Just relax, chill out. There you go. So this is the live stream where the cat just can't settle down. So, all right. Yeah. Anybody else got any good plans that they're looking forward to? Other things that we've got going on is for Eric. I don't know if you're still thinking of Hood in May, but I'm still working that out. I do got to get that seriously locked in sooner rather than later. So San Antonio is awesome. Oh my goodness, you're just now she's on the other side and you can see the whiskers. ah, it's been a couple of years since I've been there, so I'm actually looking forward to going back. I remember there's a couple things I took away from my visit to San Antonio. One, if you've never been there, the Alamo is highly encroached. So it's if you think like when you think of the Alamo and you think of wide open spaces around it, that is not the case. Um, and then two, um, you better like barbecue and Tex-Mex, and if you do, you're going to be in heaven. So uh, I'll do Hood in May 2025. Cool. And Steven, not all who wander are lost. I used to have a shirt with that on it. It was one of my favorites, but it was because it was one of my favorites. I wore it all the time, and it now shows it. So, but good words of advice there. Yeah, Riverwalk is awesome. We had some. I had gone down there. The last time I was down there was for IMCOM thing, for those Installation Management Command, U.S. Army thing, um, because they're stationed at Sam Houston, but they were having a convention of sorts. USAA was having a convention of sorts down in San Antonio. So, but it's been a while. So, but I'm looking forward to it regardless. I do Texas in the tail end of February. It's not a bad time to visit. So, um, but that part of Texas is not known for its elevation. I was at Fort Sam for a year. Nice. So, and then, so those are my immediate things coming up, but that's all work related. Surprisingly, I don't really see myself getting back into the high pointing saddle, like really turning the cameras on and filming on content until probably April. Um, Ideally, like if I can get to Denver in April and go out to the dunes, that would be perfect. Um, if not, we'll figure something out. But I'm at this weird spot now where I've exhausted a lot of stuff, even in reshoots. So everything is sort of an effort now, which isn't a bad place to be. So then, let's see. What is significant about the Great? I don't think it is Great Sand Dunes. That's the one down in, or no, it's the one on the backside of the Rockies, but it's the tallest dune. The one on there, and somebody will put the correct name in. They usually do because you guys are awesome. It's the tallest dune in the United States. So it's been, when I started this thing years and years ago, Star Dune, there you go. Thank you, Stephen. When I started this thing, I had actually, there's this list of other stuff that I've always sort of wanted to check off, um, like do little snippets of it. So, there's the spot in Oklahoma that's like the quote unquote tallest hill. It's like just shy of 2,000 feet. And you can go back and forth about, hi, sweetie. You can go back and forth about what makes a hill, what makes a mountain. Yeah. And, but I figured it would always be, if when I redo Oklahoma, I'd like to start in the eastern part of the state on that tallest hill and then go out to Black Mesa and talk a little bit about definitions. So much of our hobby is, what we name these things. Yep, that's it. Kavanaugh Hill. That's the one, David. Thank you. So much of our stuff, like, people can say, oh, Driscoll Mountain, that's not a mountain. And, arguably, you're right, it's not. But it is the tallest thing in Louisiana. But then again, that's just lines on a map. Take away the lines, it's just another bump on a giant coastal plain. Um, whereas you have a place like Timms Hill in Wisconsin, which is the tallest high point that is a hill, that calls itself a hill, and make a pretty good case. Yeah, it's a hill, but it's surrounded by a bunch of other like hills. So it's an interesting. I always think about, how we name these things, um, how we do, how we approach this. Stephen, have you considered logging your climbs and high points on Peak Bagger? I thought about it. I did think about it pretty seriously. I do use Peak Bagger to read trip reports. It's been great for getting perspective, getting some insight. But to be candid, I I am I'm probably lazy on it. Um, and I don't know if I'd consider myself a peak bagger. Um, they have rules. You have to go a certain distance or stuff like that. And I am one of these folks where if I uh if I think driving up something is going to give me better production value, um, I'll do the drive because hey, it looks cool on film instead of the hike. Or if I show up at a place and I don't have the time to do it, then I'll do, you know, like Mount Washington was a great example. Would I have liked to hike up Mount Washington? Oh yeah. Did I? No. The one day I took the train because trains awesome on film. Everybody loves trains. Trains. People think there's trains. But okay, sorry. We're gonna take a slight diversion here. Trains on film ties into the American love affair with the Western. People like trains on film because people at one point really like Westerns. And you don't get a high point like on Washington with a train on it and don't go film the train. That's just my production hat is like, no, take the train. um, so it's a slight diversion, but that's basically the reason I never got on to Peak Bagger is I don't feel the how I do things. They might appreciate it. I don't want to say they wouldn't appreciate it, but I don't necessarily follow the rules. Um, my goal has always been, however you get to the high top of the high point, that's up to your recognizance. That's up to your choice. If you want to ride a horse up Guadalupe Peak, hey man, if I would have had that opportunity and I could have filmed it, I probably would have did it. Um, See, Steven, you're a lot more diligent than I am. um, Also, for other folks there, Stephen, with his location near Mount Hood, if you guys decide at some point to approach and tackle that peak, you might want to give him a jingle to get some intel on it because he has great experience in that area. Yeah, so like Jess, standard out here is 3,000 a cent to be counted for things like 13ers, 14er cents. So she lives in Denver, Colorado area. So whereas I would drive up to the top of Mount Evans, I'd probably film the drive and post it and call it a summit because hey, I reached the top. So it's the one weird little thing um, I think is interesting about high pointing compared to peak bagging or the 14ers or those pursuits. And that's why I like the way I do it. And I will argue, though, how you approach it is your own personal choice. And I totally, more power to you. I think it's awesome that people take different approaches to this. But in my mind, you know, I think at the end of the day, I want to tell a good story. Hi, sweetie. Sorry, she's all cuddled in. David, I'm looking forward to going back to Colorado again. So am I. I do like Colorado. I think it's a wonderful place. So I try to put all my hikes in a peak bagger. If there's a summit, I enjoy adding to all the different lists. Good advice, or thanks, Bill. So yeah, when it comes to mine, I think my archive um, is how I edit these things For me, my experience is so wrapped up in the production of it. I don't think I've had a clean high pointing experience where I've just went out to hike the peak without um, filming it since 2016. So every time I go, with the exception of Tim's Hill, surprisingly, because every time I go back to Wisconsin, I go out to Tim's Hill. Uh, that one is, there have been times since then where I just went out and hiked up it, go to the top tower, take in the view. But yeah, most of the time, like when I visit these places, um, I'm always thinking of it from a production standpoint, which makes it interesting. I think my experience with it is not just I got to get to the top of the mountain, but and I mentioned this before. This is nothing that you guys haven't heard before, but how do I film this? How do I make this experience in this mountain or this hill or this sign on the side of the road interesting and worth your time to sit down and actually watch it, um, which makes things different. So, Archie, I like Peak Beggar as a digital journal of sorts to keep track. Yeah, and it's got some great tools. So, if you guys, for those that might not, that could be watching this later, and you want to be like, "What's Peak Bagger?" Just Google it, go to it. It's a great resource. Great resource, not only for state high points, but for any bit of elevation in the country. You will find amazing content there and amazing people that have left awesome trip reports on a variety of things that I've used for some of the just most random places. So definitely a good site worth checking out. And I'd be remiss not to mention Summit Post in the following sentence is also a fantastic resource. Lissa John is another good one. And if you guys got other ones, by all means, throw them in the chat. I don't know, is Peakery still going? Um, but there is, I think, Peak Visors out there too. All trails usually have some interesting stuff too, but lots of great resources out there, and lots of great communities to really get you some insight. So, um, yeah, David, it's worth checking out. Um, but yeah, lots of good tools. It's interesting to see in the timeline in the 10 years since I started doing this, um, how much more some of these places have grown and how much the the communities on these are thriving. So, and then I will also put out a plug for the 50 States High Pointing group on Facebook, of all places. Um, one of the last places I still actually use my Facebook for is pretty much just for that group. There's a great community there too. So you'll get lots of good intel, lots of good insight, um, lots of good recommendations. So, all right. Wow. That one, we're at 9:10. This went a little faster. Imagine in the far future, there is a peak barrier for astro pointing. You can log your sense of Olympimons or Tenzing Montes. You know, the one that I think is most realistic that I think will happen in my lifetime is somebody um, tackling Mount Huygens, which is the tallest mountain on the moon, and somebody actually getting to the highest point, which I named Selene Point for lack of a name, on the dark side or the back side of the moon. Um, those I think could happen in our lifetime. But Mars, maybe. It'd be pretty wild. I would love to see that bird's eye view or drone footage launched from the rim of Olympus Mons. Because, if you're looking out to down slope of Olympus Mons, it's going to be the most boring thing in the world. Because I think the elevation walking in from the angle, not the elevation, but the angle of the trail at Hoosier Hill, like walking from the gravel driveway up to the picnic area where the rock is and that, I think that's actually got a steeper angle than, climbing up Olympus Mons. So, but the caldera on top has to be absolutely fascinating. I'd love to see it. But, yeah, it would be pretty wild. But I do think those 2, um, on the moon could happen. So, fingers crossed. Um, maybe if I win, like, a ridiculous lottery, we can make it happen. So, um, anyway, on that note, I, think I'm gonna wrap it. I wanna wish you all a very, um, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, um, however you celebrate. Solstice, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. I know I'm missing others, um, but 'tis the season. So um, have joy and a ton of good times with your families, friends, and um, I wish you all the best. And I've given it some thought. I'm going to bump it up to Saturday. So December 30th, we're going to move up the New Year's edition of this. I'm not going to wait till New Year's Eve. I know people have usually plans and all that. So, December 30th, that's Saturday, and I'll get that up a lot sooner. So, if you want to join, I'd love to see you there. We'll drink, be merry, have a good time. So, thank you all for being here tonight. Shabo, thanks you all for being here tonight. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. So, cheers.